So now that I've finished A Song of Ice and Fire, it's time to rank them in order from the worst to the best, because that's just what I do here. And that's not even like a typical like YouTube-y thing for me to do. I normally in my everyday life would have a tendency to do that to my series and figure out which one's my favorite and my least favorite. I don't know. My brain just enjoys doing that kind of stuff. And to be quite honest, I was a little bit surprised when I put these in order because I don't think I have a hot take here. I think it's pretty stereotypical of what I tend to find when I go out on the internet as to where people tend to fall with their choices. And because normally I have, even with my favorite series like Dune or Dark Tower, I normally have like a hot take somewhere and like everybody else's favorite, I just don't like it, or everybody else hates this book and I put it on the top of the, I don't know. I normally have a hot take in there somewhere, and I don't think I do this time. All that being said and all that out of the way, I want to remind people that when I did all of my reviews on these books, I gave nothing less than an 8 out of 10. So these are all extremely good books. So when I come out here and I say this is the absolute worst A Song of Ice and Fire book, keep in mind that it's still an 8 out of 10. That being said, the worst of the worst of the worst books in A Song of Ice and Fire, A Feast for Crows. To nobody's surprise, right? I feel like it was paraded around in front of me as the worst. Everybody said it was the worst, and everybody was right. It is, once again, still a very good book. Do not get me wrong, but it just had a lot working against it. He split the characters up. I still stand by the fact I think the books work better when all the characters are together. I don't think splitting them in the way that he split them was the best choice he could have made. Did it ruin the experience? No, it's still an 8 out of 10 read, but it was a step down compared to when the characters are all married together. Then, with this being split in the way that it was, this is all the characters that I just don't tend to care about in one book. So that made it a little bit rougher to read. That being said, it's written just as well as any other book. Some people argue that it's written better. I don't know if I see that, but I still just see that master level of writing and the way that he can structure. I don't know. He's just an extremely good writer. I'll say that. But then in defense of the book, it is the shortest one of the lot. So, points for that, I guess. They didn't make us suffer too long. I'm kidding. We didn't suffer. It's an 8 out of 10. It was a good book. Anyway, next up after that, coming in fourth place, would be A Dance with Dragons. And I think, once again, this is to absolutely nobody's surprise. I think this is a pretty stereotypical pick for this position in the ranking. And this was actually quite surprising to me because I was really looking forward to this book. This has all my favorite characters. It just seemed like this was an easy home run for George. And it wasn't. It felt stretched out. It felt, in my review of this one, I said it was a momentum problem. The momentum when we entered this book took a step down, and that made it much less engaging to read, and it genuinely got irritating after a certain point when I just was really wanted to give that momentum a push, to give it a little bit of a jog, get it going, and it just wouldn't. It never did. At no point, all the way up to the end of the book, did he ever decide to shift into a new gear, and he just left it there in low for the whole thing, and it really frustrated me. Anyway, now coming in at third place is going to be A Game of Thrones, the original, the first in the series, the book that started it all. And this is a wonderful book, but I don't know. I just feel like there are other books in the series that do this better. This one actually is much smaller in scope and scale and what the characters are doing. It feels much more contained than some of the later books in the series do, and it feels much more streamlined in the story that's happening. Of course, it hasn't ballooned, it hasn't expanded to include other sections of the world and so many more characters that we will eventually get. And I think that benefits this book greatly. It feels like a much tighter reading experience due to that smaller scale, even though this is a pretty large scale book in and of itself, but compared to, like I said, the later books in the series, much smaller scale. And that benefits the book, that benefits the reading experience, and you get just some of our characters in that one, Edward. But I just remember this one extremely fondly. I really do. And I'm going to say it comes in third as far as the overall ranking of the series. Moving on to second place. And this is the one where I don't know where people put this book. This is the one that I don't know where it would normally fall on a list. Everything else I feel like I'm landing right where everybody else in the world lands. But this one will be A Clash of Kings. And this is Game of Thrones 2.0, I guess you would say. It feels like the first book continued. It feels like a proper sequel to the first book. But it does everything that the first book does, just a little bit better. The drama's a little bit better. The tension's a little bit better. The suspense is a little bit better. It's basically Game of Thrones 2.0, except for the thing, and I'm sure I said this in my review, but the thing that blew my mind in this one was the end battle. There is an end battle in this between Stannis, who is not even a POV character, and he's kind of creepy, piece of shit. You're not on Stannis' side, and you're not on this Melisandre chick's side. He's got this creepy witch doing creepy shit. That's a side of the battlefield you don't want to be on. At least while I'm reading this, I'm like, dude, creepy. Wow. Steer clear of Stannis. Then on the other side of that battle, you have the Lannisters at King's Landing, and the Lannisters are the big bad of the series, and you don't want to be on their side either. So you have two people coming into this big end battle at the end of the book who you don't want to be on their side. Like, how are you going to form a battle with two sides where you want nothing to do with either of them, and this is your big climax? Then you're going to put on the side of the Lannisters, the big bad, Tyrion as the king's hand. Now, he is a character that I personally was deeply invested in, so you kind of want Tyrion to win, but he's also a Lannister fighting for the Lannisters, who you don't want to win, against Stannis, who's a creepy guy with a creepy witch who you don't want to win. The dynamics of that battle were brilliant. The way that it came together and the way that it was structured, truly mind-blowing how well that was handled. I know I kind of went off on a ridiculous tangent right there, but really, that's the standout moment for me that really elevated this book above anything that came before, which was only the one book, Game of Thrones. But really, even if it wasn't for that battle, it would still be Game of Thrones just a little bit better. But that ending scene and just the brilliance of how he brought that fight scene together with the characters and got you so invested in a battle between two people you don't even like and don't even fucking care if either side wins. Way to go, George. That's all I have to say. And then, of course, once again, surprising absolutely nobody, Storm of Swords. What do you even say about A Storm of Swords? It is the pinnacle of everything A Song of Ice and Fire. I am not alone in saying this. I think it is probably the most stereotypical pick that I have made on this entire list, other than putting Feast for Crows on the bottom, is putting A Storm of Swords on the top. The drama is at its absolute highest. The tension's at its highest. Characters are at their peak, doing crazy character shit. This book is the book where multiple people are getting married in this book. You know what I'm talking about, because I've said it before. If there's one thing you don't ever want to do in Westeros, and that's get married. Never. Just stay a bachelor for your entire life. Don't even be a guest at a wedding in this series. That's all I'm going to say. But, yeah, just, oh my gosh, it doesn't get much better than that. And once again, I just raved about A Clash of Kings. And that one I could see somebody putting that as number one on their list. And I would not necessarily argue with them, because that came close to being number one. But I don't think you're going to beat A Storm of Swords when it comes to J.R.R. Tolkien, Jesus Christ. When it comes to George R.R. Martin, that's the king that I don't see anyone knocking it off of its throne. I don't see any book coming out. I don't see The Winds of Winter. I don't see anything coming for this guy's crown. Never say never. You could get the next one, and it could be the big daddy of the series. I am just hesitant to believe that anything's going to ever surpass this, at least in terms of this particular book series. And of course, as usual, I would love all of your rankings down in the comment section below. And as always, the link for my Patreon is in the description below. The link for my Discord is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.